One.
Hi, Barry. It's Community Chat. And today we have Patricia Dent with Vantage. And Patricia and I have crossed paths over the years on so many occasions. And Patricia's just so involved with small businesses, small business owners. And, she has a true passion and a heart for making sure that Barry and our community and the small business owners really have a voice and some help. So, Patricia, welcome to Community Chat, and thank you
Thanks,
for your
Heather.
time.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And I would love to hear about some of the new ventures that you're doing to really help out. I know I'm on a couple of your different Facebook groups, and I would love you to share with people what you're looking for and what you can do.
Well, it's interesting because I think for everybody, particularly small business, the pandemic was the beginning of, now what? And in fact, I did a webinar a year ago that was called, "What do we do now?" And that was kind of an initial way of looking at it. So during the pandemic, we've been trying to support people through the live program that I have called Vantage. It's actually a 17-year-old company, and I've had it for 8 and have been developing content ever since. And the reason I love that program is that in a smaller city, you absolutely need to network. If you don't network, you're not going to fulfill your potential. We're the biggest small city, if I can say it that way, in the universe, I think. And so I learned very early, you have to get to know people. So I worked at that, and I try to connect people all the time. But pandemic is a little different. So we did finish up our last group on Zoom. Not that everybody loves Zoom at the moment, but And what I've been working on for the last 6 months is refurbishing and redeveloping that content so that I can put it online. The company is called, it's a subdivision of Vantage. It's called Ask for Directions Business Training. And you'll hear more about it very shortly because I'm about to launch. And Ask for Directions takes people from the very first steps of starting a business in order through about 7 modules of all of the things they need to be successful when they start their business. I've been a coach and a mentor for a long time. I mentor for the city, and I coach my own folks. And what I've learned is that it's critical to have coaching alongside the information. You can have information, and then you can sort of say, what do I do with this information that's actually going to work? And that's not everybody, but it is a large proportion of us who run into a small wall every once in a while. So I believe in coaching, and there's a lot of coaching with this new program too, on a weekly basis, in fact, because I think that makes the difference.
Well, I think that's a good way to have that communication, that reinforcement, and they won't lose their jive as they're going along. And, I know as a small business owner myself that as I am doing the work and the tasks that I get given, my momentum starts to slow. And then to have that ability to say, hey, Patricia, okay, this is what I've done, what's next, and it's an accountability.
It is too, because here's the thing. We do have to motivate ourselves as small business people. We really do. And that's not always a completely easy thing, particularly when we're dealing with family and business and pandemic and are we open, are we shut, are we whatever. And I'm not trying to make light of that. That's really a tough call for a small business right now. So one of the things that's important is starting with mindset, I think. That's actually the very first series of little classes in the module, because if you can figure out a way to reinforce your mindset, you're going to be much more motivated as you go through. And then when you aren't, that's when you say, hey, Patricia and or my fellow students, help. I need some help. I need some advice. And I believe in peer mentoring as well, so that's important. So what else have we done? Well, we're about to launch that, but in the meantime, I've launched a Facebook group called Startup and Grow Your Business. So that is free to join. There's some rules, as there are in most Facebook groups. We do a promotion day, for example, where I make sure that people shout out to another business because we need to support one another. We're going to do a couple of webinars that might be interesting. I'm just putting the finishing touches on a webinar called The Future of Work, so that we can look at what the changes are. And that's coming up soon, and I'll be talking about that a little bit more. And a boot camp that says, hey, you're starting a business. What do you absolutely need to know as you start up a business? And the reason I think it's important is that most of us have wandered through the idea of startup a business, and we're going to make mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes, and that's okay. That's a learning process. What we don't want to do is make a mistake that flattens us. We don't want a mistake that drains our bank accounts. We don't want a mistake that makes us delayed for months and months on end. So this is about really chasing your dream, putting some effort into learning what you need to do, and getting help along the way. Because I think there are people out there who may not be enamored of working for someone else, and perhaps doing the work that lands on their desk rather than work, that they may really be wanting to do to have an impact on the world. So I know I went through that process. I was in quite a good position in a big firm, and kind of thought, I don't like this anymore. So that's why I decided I would start my own business.
I
How
think
about
a lot of
you?
people do. They're
Yeah.
afraid because of the pandemic. They're afraid to take that risk, that chance,
Mhm.
that but when they have the knowledge that there's people like you that can help them walk the way through, that it's
Right.
not as scary as they may feel.
Well, and I think that's a really good point to make, Heather, because honestly, there isn't a time when we're completely fearless,
Mhm.
and with good reason, because if you're going to start a business, then you have to assess risk. So one of the reasons behind what I'm doing is to mitigate that risk, to lower it. If you know what you're doing, and you know you can rely on somebody or a group of people to help you if you come across something you don't quite know how to do, then your risk lowers. And I think that's important. And you know what else I think is important? I think ask for directions is for people to put up their hand. Put up your hand and ask, right? So there's two things. One is, I think people don't realize traditionally, do you remember the Roaring Twenties?
Yes.
Brian Chu, who's a graduate, mentioned in the Facebook group, after the Spanish flu, the Roaring Twenties came, and it was
Mhm.
a great time of growth. Well, BDC has forecast a GDP growth of 5.5% for
Mhm.
2021. That's pretty fabulous. So I think time is now to kind of carefully take the first steps, learn how to do it so that you're ready for that growth, because we always want that period of growth, right?
Yes.
And I think and the last thing too that I'm doing right now, we'll see how busy I get with a couple of groups starting in May, but I have a Zoom call link, a couple of them actually, on my website. So if you look at growvantage.com, on the right-hand side, there are links for free Zoom calls on Friday afternoons at 2. That's for the moms whose kids are hopefully still going down for a nap, and and Wednesday night for those who might be still working at a job, and at 8 o'clock they might want to come on and chat. Sometimes we're chatting and it's not serious. Sometimes we're asking or answering questions. So those are some of the things we've been doing in the short term, and I guess one of the things that I think people need to do is to use their talents or their connections for good. So I'm a past president of the Barrie Chamber of Commerce. I'm still involved with the chamber for sure. We're running the nominations for the board shortly, so talk to me about becoming a board member if that's interesting to you. And they have some great webinars and so on that are going on. So I think it's time for people to get as much learning done as they possibly can, and to advocate for, their position. We have government bodies who are listening, and although there's still maybe some imperfections in their assistance, we are in the presence of people who do listen to us. So advocating with our politicians is an important part as well.
Absolutely. And you've been so involved with so many different areas. Like every time I've caught up with you, you're always doing something. Your hands in a different pot. You're always it's always in innovative and new, and you just take each challenge so head on and thought out, mind you, but head on, and you're just like, okay, here's the next challenge. Okay, this is how I'm going to work this challenge. And with that being sort of the backbone of how you do things, it's a really great way for people to recognize that just take a breath
Right.
and figure out what you want, and then just find the way to make that happen. And by utilizing all of these gifts that you have created, then people can really find their niche.
I would encourage that for sure, but let's be truthful for a second. I do have an inner 3-year-old who gets frustrated and maybe has a quiet temper tantrum. I do have one of those, but I also make mistakes. And one of the things, if I could wave a magic wand for entrepreneurs, what I would do is have people be okay with making a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
Not that we like it. I mean, I don't like it when I make a mistake. I actually use that as a teaching tool in courses, because if you start something with the idea that you're not going to make a mistake, then you're probably mistaken right there. And that's a really an effective way to learn. If you learn from your mistakes, then you go, okay, that didn't work. Now what do we do? So it may sometimes look easier, although I don't know that it does. But really, we all have to be human, and we all have to try and go after our dreams, and rather than be afraid to make a mistake, to just get out there and make that mistake and surround yourself with the people who will say, yeah, that was probably not great, but look, we can do this now.
Well, I call it failing forward.
Failing forward is a great
that is my typical, well, you failed forward, let's go. You have to get up the 8th time, right?
Yeah, well, hopefully, now it's my wish that people would only have to do it once. One mistake per customer in each category, right? So we'll see.
In each category, I like that.
So,
Patricia, is there anything specific or anything that if somebody is watching this and they think, I don't know if I could be part of this group, or I don't know if that's what I'm looking for. What is the best way for someone to poke around, find the information, and see if it's a fit for them?
That's a good question. I think the easiest thing is to chat about it, because I can absolutely tell you, join one of the Zoom calls, and I will absolutely tell you if I don't think you're either at the stage or we can be the best answer for you. I also think you should take advantage of some of the things that are going to happen. So the webinar, I believe it's going to be in the afternoon on April the 28th, and more information is coming up. That's going to be an absolutely free event. I think it will be an interesting idea where people could pool their ideas on how they want to work in the future. And if you like that kind of thing, then great. Then you might know it's good. On the Grow Vantage site, there's some material on what the classes can be. I'm creating more content on my Ask for Directions training site. So if you look at that one, that's interesting too. It's not quite there yet, but we're working on it. I think that's one of the things you mentioned too, is like, it may not be perfect. In fact, it probably won't ever be perfect, but let's have some action and do it. So I'm a believer in imperfect action.
Yes,
Love
and
that phrase.
that is an awesome phrase. And if people can just recognize that it's okay to not know everything,
Yes.
But if you have a passion, if you have a desire, if you have a want, then investigate it. Reach out. People like yourself are available to investigate. And maybe they're not comfortable coming to you directly, but you have these groups and these chats where there's all kinds of people like us that have all reached out to one another. And like you said, that peer mentoring, these are opportunities for everyone, right?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, our best guarantee of success, and I don't guarantee success because it's really up to you whether you put in the effort and whatever. But one of the things that I know that makes successful entrepreneurs is that ability to not be so afraid that you don't take a step forward, to evaluate the stuff that you do and see where the opportunities for improvement are, and to surround yourself by people. So, for example, you could be in the Facebook group, and we're not turning people away, although we like them to abide by the rules. Um, but to join the Facebook group, you can tippy-toe around in there without being too obvious. But you can also promote yourself on one of the days of the week. Or this afternoon at 5:30, I'll be live in the Facebook group. It's a Thursday afternoon activity and answering questions. So that's a low commitment level, just to try stuff out to make sure you're comfortable, right?
Absolutely. Well, I think that, you have the ability to, over the years, you've created all of these different ways of recognizing the needs out there.
Right.
And I myself find that there's always been times that I've, gone on to a different site that you are on, or following something you're doing on Facebook. And, sometimes it's what I'm looking for and sometimes it's not. But,
Yeah,
you
true.
know, it's a really great way of staying connected. And, what is this? There's a saying about like-mindedness, right?
Oh, yeah. And like-minded people will find one another, right? If you're out there enough. One of the things I think that's huge in this pandemic is that people need to stay connected. There's lots of stuff we have to take care of. And certainly we've had to learn shortcuts to new ways of doing things, so it's not so onerous. But connectivity is really, really key. And when you can, so for example, the chamber chat is another thing that is free, and it's every 2 weeks. And you can kind of dabble in there too to meet some people. And it's not a serious, serious event, but that's kind of cool. And so I would encourage people just to try things out. I think that's the best advice I could give right now. And ask questions if you're interested in getting out of the 9 to 5 or 9 to 9 or 9 to Lord knows when, because the kids were doing things during the day and now you're finishing your work in the middle of the night, you know, like that.
Yeah. Yeah, there's not really hours anymore. It's just get it done when you can get it done, right?
Kind of, if you're lucky, if you're lucky and your employer is understanding. And that's one of the lessons I want to take to the future of work session, because I think that will be important. We have to be a little more understanding of what's going on in everybody's lives, right?
Absolutely. So is there anything that you wanted to make sure that, like, I think we've covered a lot of what you do
Yeah,
for people,
right.
and you're putting out a lot of offers to help people in many ways. We will, of course, have all of your links attached and everything that has people
Thank
to
you.
be able to connect, of course.
Cool.
Is there anything specific that you want to make sure that when they connect with you, that maybe some information you want, or is there anything, just I want to make sure that we hit everything that you want to make sure gets out there today?
Well, I think we have, Heather, because I think if we just review for 2 seconds, follow your passion is a really important thing. I've said it in some ways, maybe not in all. Stay connected with people. Ask for directions, because if you ask for directions, you're going to get some help. And really, if you are looking for changes and you want to try something out, there's always Zoom calls on the Grow Vantage site. That's easy to, and it's growvantage.com, although it doesn't matter. It'll be everywhere. And just reach out. Not scary, promise. Um, but I think it's important that we support each other, and particularly in this pandemic. Yeah.
I think that is a lot of information. I'm hoping that the people that need to hear it or want to hear it are able to pick out the information that is relevant for them. And of course, they can always reach out to myself as well, and I can get you hooked up with Patricia if for
Thanks, Heather.
some reason, which, with all the links we're going to put on here, they should be able to reach out to you. But I just wanted to thank you so much for coming
Oh,
on Community Chat with me.
thank you in return. This is a lovely thing to do. Appreciate
Oh,
it.
well, thank you. So I'm Heather Hansen. I'm a mortgage agent with ratedeal.ca. I really support our local businesses here in Barrie, and I just want to have the opportunity to make sure everyone gets a voice. So have a wonderful day. Thanks, Patricia.
Thanks, Heather.